Good morning, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the little video clip. We're going to talk about that. You'll understand why I played that in a minute. Let's go ahead and have a moment of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, Lord. I thank you for this time that we could come together in your house, Lord. And we just thank you for this sanctuary that we can come and worship you, Lord, and just to come and gather in your name, Lord. And we just ask that you would bless the reading of your word today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right, so if you can tell from the slide up there, we're going to talk about finding your purpose and your calling. Obviously, in the movie, he had a purpose and a calling, like Noah. He wasn't Noah, he was Evan, but you'll get it. First, I want to share with you Romans 12:6-8. So if you want to turn to that and follow along, you may. Romans 12:6-8 says, "We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is preaching, if it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully." I think we can all think of someone who fits into each of those categories, right? We know someone who is a cheerful giver or who's very generous. We know someone who is a fabulous teacher. That's their life calling. That's their gift. So the first thing I want you to remember is to know what your gifts are. What are you good at is really what that's asking. What did God gift you with as a talent? Everyone is different. Everyone knows and does things a little differently. So everyone has a gift. All right. Some of us are called to be doctors, nurses, firefighters, teachers, writers, artists, musicians, pastors, worship leaders, missionaries. And some of us are called to come home. Back in 2013, Ben and I still lived in Virginia. He was in the Navy. And we had a conversation about what life might look like when he retired. So we knew 2018 approximately was his retirement year. And so we knew it was coming. I absolutely loved living in Virginia Beach. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay. And he wanted to move back to Michigan. I prayed for God to soften his heart, to change his mind. Let us be in agreement. We argued a lot over this topic. Every time the subject of retirement came up, it became a bone of contention. We couldn't hardly talk about it. Eventually, though, my prayers became a little less selfish. I said, "Lord, let us go where you need us. Let us do your will." I want to add that while we were attending church in Virginia, we weren't involved in ministry at all. We didn't have a small group. We didn't go to Bible study. We didn't sing in the choir. We did volunteer in the children's church once a month. That was our one Sunday every month. And otherwise, we came in and we listened to the sermon and we left. We were content to do just that at that time. That was okay. One day in January of 2014, I told Ben I knew why I didn't want to move back to Michigan. I knew what we were supposed to do here, and I did not want to do it. When I finally told him that I thought we were supposed to come back and help grow my dad's church, I almost fell on the floor because he said, "I've been feeling that way for a long time." You see, God was aligning our hearts, not just with each other, but with his own will as well. I still needed more convincing because y'all know from the last sermon that I did that I'm not that easily convinced. And I just couldn't figure out why we couldn't and shouldn't just stay in Virginia where we were. But every time I thought of this, this verse from Ruth 1:16, if you want to look there, you can. It came to mind quite often. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. I know just being in a marriage doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to be on the same page, but it should mean that where one goes, the other goes. And that's what kept coming back to me. I had followed him to Virginia and married him and stayed there the whole time he was in the Navy, and I was going to follow him back home too. In October of 2014, I wrote the following in my journal. So I have this solid documentation I could look back on. I wrote this down. Said, I know, Lord, that there are new adventures up ahead. I believe that there are new memories to make and new chapters to write. There will be new places to frequent and new traditions to create. I know waiting down the road is the log home I long to design and the garden we can't wait to harvest. There's the tree house the boys are waiting to build and the chickens they can't wait to hatch. There's Dylan's first big buck hanging next to Ben's and his first hunting video gone viral. I can see all of this and more. I can see healing and growth of a small town church. I see Wednesday night Bible studies and teaching Sunday school. I see writing and speaking. Lord, these are the things you have laid on my heart. I prayed for a sense of peace in all of this, a sense of longing, no matter where that may be. Guide our steps, Lord. Open my heart to this new adventure. When I asked God for peace, God led me to this verse. Philippians 4, 6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. He gave me that sense of peace, knowing that his plan was better than mine. The day after I wrote that journal entry, literally the next morning, I did not want to get up to go to church that morning. I had been up late writing. I was up like all night writing. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't want to go. We went to the 9 a.m. service back in Virginia, so it was early. And it's about a 20-minute drive from our house, so we had to leave quite early. But I was so glad that I got up and I went to church. During that sermon, I asked God to clarify what it was we were supposed to do. Because at that time, I was still like, I'm not really sure about this, okay? And during that sermon, I asked him to clarify what we were supposed to do. And while I don't recall what the entire message was about that Sunday, I will never forget the verse that stood out in my mind. His word spoke to my heart. In Mark 5:19, he says, go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. His words had never been so clear. All right, when we talked about where we saw ourselves in 10 years down the road, there was certain elements that Ben and I agreed upon. We wanted a log cabin. We wanted 20 plus acres. We wanted hunting land. We wanted some kind of waterfront, some fruit trees, a garden, a chicken coop. These were kind of a list of maybe a bucket list, if you will, like, just the things that we dreamed of. These were not things that we prayed about. It was just conversation between us. Hey, we'd really like to have this someday. We'd really like to have that. I think all couples kind of have those conversations, Wouldn't it be nice to have this kind of car or that? But we didn't ask God for them. We didn't pray for them. We just had that conversation together. In March of 2015, so now we're a couple of years into this whole thought process of what we were supposed to do. And in March of 2015, we still had at least 3 years before he was due to retire. So the events that took place after that were out of place in our minds, okay? They were not timely, if you will. We were having a lazy day sitting around watching the kids play on the floor. It was raining that day. I remember we were just kind of hanging around. Ben started reading from his phone. He said, "Hey, look at this." He held up his phone and I could just make out the image of a house from across the room. He began reading the description. Log cabin, 22 acres, river running through it, chicken coop, cultivated for deer and turkey, fruit trees, landscaped. By the time he got to the end, I had tears just streaming down my face. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. He said, "Are you crying?" I said, "That's our house. Not just any house, that's our house." He handed me the phone so I could get a closer look. It was beautiful. The picture of the house sitting on the hill looked like a painting. It was the house we had talked about building one day, the one that I pictured when he asked me on our 10th wedding anniversary where I saw myself in 10 years. And I told him I saw myself laying in my hammock in the yard of our log cabin, and I'm writing. It was the house I pictured when I thought about the boys building a tree house with Ben and Grandpa, the one with the chicken coop and easy access to hunting and fishing. I quickly mapped the property to see where it was located. Y'all, I couldn't breathe. It was 5 miles from this church. That night I wrote in my journal that God must have shown us this house for a reason. But why now? Ben still had almost 3 years left in the Navy, but only God could place our dream home 5 miles from the church he called us to grow. I prayed and asked God to give me a verse that would help in our decision regarding this house. And he gave me this. Psalm 37, 3-4 says, "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." I wrote the address to the house at the top of that page. A couple of days later, we finally decided we would contact our realtor, which is my aunt. She's been here many times, my Aunt Sharon. And we decided we couldn't make an offer on the house at least until July, because you see, Ben had a chance of making chief that July, and we thought, well, he'll be getting a pay raise, and that means that maybe we could do this, but we couldn't do it till July, and this was in March at that time. We were going to have to take a chance that it would stay on the market. We listed a small piece of property that we owned over here in Edmore. We had the house control burned on that property, so it's just a little acreage, little 1.6 acre lot. And we listed it thinking that maybe we would use that for a down payment if by some chance we were to get this house. My Aunt Sharon suggested that she call the realtor of the sellers to find out what their motivation was. Maybe they weren't in a huge hurry to sell the house. And so she called me back and she said, they have a cash offer on the house already. She said, those never fall through. Like, this is pretty much a done deal. So we thought, let's go ahead and list our property in Michigan and get it sold. So when the time comes that we really can make an offer on something, we'll have that money already set aside. And so we went through that process. We listed that house. We get another phone call from my aunt. She says, the township will not let you build a house on a lot over here in Home Township unless it's a 2-acre lot. Ours was 1.6 acres. She said, nobody's going to want to buy that because they can't build a house on it. Because we weren't grandfathered in anymore because we'd already taken the house out, if that makes any sense. So we prayed about this. We thought, wow, what are the chances of us even selling this property? My aunt had told us, really, if one of the neighbors connecting the property, we're on a corner, if someone behind us or next to us would want this lot to add to their existing property, that would be our best bet at selling it. We thought, this is impossible. How on earth are we going to sell this? It's just not going to happen. Within 2 weeks, we had 2 different neighbors in a little bit of a bidding war over our little corner lot. We finally had an offer on the house or on the property, and when the time came to do our closing, to sell it, to sign off on it, we looking online, I was just kind of searching through the realtor listings, and something came up in my search that day that I thought was a mistake, because the log cabin that was a done deal cash offer was coming back up in my search. I quickly called my aunt and I said, what is going on? The house is back listed. If there's something is not right. And she said, let me make a phone call. And when she called me back, she said, you're not going to believe this, but that cash offer fell through. The couple that had made that cash offer had changed their mind. We said, okay, we're going to pray about this. She said, this will not last on the market. So we did a lot of praying. We sent my aunt and my dad out to look at the property. We thought, well, let's just get a look at it, make sure that it's everything we think it is. They both called me that same day. My aunt said, you need to make an offer on this property. My dad called and said, you need to make an offer on this property. My mom had said, you won't make an offer on this without coming home to look at it, right? I really think she just wanted us to come home. But she said, you won't make an offer without coming home to look at it. I said, of course not, Mom. That's ridiculous. We won't do that. Who does that? And then we got the phone calls from my dad and my aunt saying, you really need to make an offer on this property. We did a lot of praying overnight, and then we made an offer on a house sight unseen. We didn't have a pre-approval. We didn't have anything saved for the down payment. In fact, we were in the middle of refinancing our Virginia townhome. Lowering that payment would give us a chunk towards the new loan, the new mortgage, but we didn't even know if that refinancing process was going to hurt us, if it was even going to allow us to get the loan. When you have a loan open that you're currently trying to close out, that can affect all of your borrowing abilities, right? So there wasn't anything that we could do in that process. Like, we just had to wait. We went ahead and applied for the loan, the second loan, but we couldn't do anything in the meantime. We basically just kind of were sitting ducks waiting for them to give us answers. Whatever our finances were, whatever our credit rating, whatever our circumstances, 2 mortgages are nearly impossible. I mean, we did have 2 incomes, but that's a huge, thing to take on. Friends, our God moved mountains to get us that house. Finally, the only thing standing in our way was the appraisal. It was ordered on March 26th, and almost a month later, we still had nothing. The bank said every appraiser they had contacted had come back to say it was a very unique and special property. They couldn't find anything comparable. So we waited. We had scheduled a trip to come up here to visit at the end of June. We had hoped to close on the house during that time frame. It was supposed to be our closing. But that appraisal had held things up. We made so many trips back and forth from Virginia to Michigan over the years, but none of them stand out in my mind as much as that one. We saw the house and the property for the first time in complete awe. A few days after we saw the house for the first time. It was 4th of July. We took my grandma to dinner over in Stanton, and it was about 7:30 at night, and I said, I think we should go take Graham to go see the house. And of course, the first time we went with our realtor, right? And so I said, I think we should go take her to see the house. And Ben said, you want to go to this stranger's house at 7:30 at night on the 4th of July and interrupt their holiday? And I said, yes, I do. So we did. We actually went. I had prayed on the drive to Michigan that the property would not only be everything that I wanted, but it would be everything that Ben wanted and everything that the kids wanted. And I knew that he had his heart set on some really good hunting property. When we lived in Virginia, our townhouse was like on a postage stamp, okay? It was so small. And so having that opportunity to just walk out the front door and go hunt was, he had to drive over an hour to go hunt on one of the bases down there. So I knew this was a big deal for him. And so I had just prayed that it would be everything he wanted as well. We walked up to the house that day, that 4th of July, a little cautiously, but the owners came out. They were super sweet. They welcomed us with open arms, let us in. They let us show my grandma around the whole property. And there had been some deer heads hanging in the loft upstairs when we came the first time. And so Ben wanted to know if they had come from the UP or if they were local deer. And the guy said, no, all of these came off of this property. They were massive, massive bucks. And so I could see the color in his face, just like the shock and the surprise. And the guy says, hey, did you see the deer blinds? I built them myself. He said, no, I didn't see those. And he said, come on, I'll go show you. So they took a walk around the whole property, and he showed him the 2 deer blinds that he had built from scratch. So when they came back from looking at the deer blinds, he said, hey, did your wife see the fruit orchard? I knew that there was a few fruit trees. I didn't know there was a fenced-in fruit orchard. 6 apple trees, 2 pear trees. There were 30 blueberry bushes at that time. There was currants, there was gooseberries. It was a fruit orchard. Dylan asked them about the fishing down in the river. It's right here on the Flat River. He said, how's the fishing? And the man explained that they had built a rock bed right in front of the house where it dips down and you can walk down to the river. They had built a rock bed there, dug it out and built a rock bed, and the bass will bed down right there. Just throw your line out and they'll bite. We went back home, back to Virginia after that trip, and a month later, on July 28th of 2015, we closed on our house. I tell you this story because I believe that God gave us this house as a constant reminder of his goodness. He gave us the desires of our heart without us ever speaking the words aloud to him. It is a reminder to us every day of why we are here. God placed a calling on our hearts, a calling to grow this church. Friends, you are part of this story. You are here for a reason. Every one of you. You have a purpose and a calling as well. Jeremiah 29:11. I can't go without sharing that verse. It's my favorite. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Whether God is asking you to become a pastor like he did Pastor Bob and my son Coleman, or he's asking you to leave behind the life you know to grow a church 1,000 miles away like he did Ben and I, or he's asking you to build a boat like he did Noah. Friends, what are you waiting for? I have one more video to show you if I can get out of this. Maybe. There we go.